Hello and welcome to SMPD, the podcast where we look back at the shows that shaped our childhood. I'm Chris Bolton. With me, as always, my partner in podcasting, Mr. Mark Williams.
Hello.
And this episode, slightly later than advertised, sorry, listeners, we are looking back at the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I'd like to say, slightly later than advertised, much anticipated. It's really fucking not.
No, I think we were going to do this 2 weeks ago, but we didn't have an episode that week because I had to work away. I got suddenly sent away, and it's a good job I cancelled because the B&B I was staying in, not only did it not have broadband, it didn't have any sort of internet or any sort of mobile connection. So I literally had to sit and watch like one of the 3 channels on TV. That was my only fucking choice last week. Painful. Yeah, that's like valleys in the middle of Wales for you. So I mean, we were supposed to do this 2 weeks ago, and I don't think I've ever seen you respond quite so quickly when I've said, "Can we knock this one in the head for tonight?"
Yeah, I was so happy.
I don't think I'd even finished typing before you replied saying, "Yeah, fine."
I was honest to God, I was dreading doing it then, dreaded doing it now. If anything, the fact that we were knocking it back was a bit like, oh, I could probably watch some more of this now.
Yeah.
I tried and couldn't. I mean, let's dive into like initial reactions. I was initially quite interested to do this because I mentioned this over on Who Wins when we were looking at Sonic over on Who Wins, but my relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog has changed drastically throughout my life. Like as a kid in the 90s, like Sonic was cool, right? Because he's kind of designed to be that ultimate 90s icon, right? Like he's got attitude and he's cool and he's rad and he's a teenager and he likes chili dogs and all of this stuff, right? So, and let's be fair, he was cooler than Mario in the 90s, right? Even though like Mario was by far and away the better game and always will be. Like in the 90s, he was way cooler, right? And at that time, I had a Sega Master System rather than the NES and stuff like that. So I had a relationship with Sonic as a kid. And then the older I've got, the more I've realized how fucking annoying he is. And the more he really, really gets under my skin. And I think this show is like kind of the worst of that. So this was hard going.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before more than once. Like we were Nintendo kids, we weren't Sega kids. We had, well, saying that we had a Spectrum, then we had an Amiga, and then we moved on to PlayStation. But we had Game Boys as well, and like friends of ours had NESs and SNESs and stuff. So we were the ones that did have Mega Drives. We didn't tend to play Sonic. We play other stuff instead. But yeah, we were Nintendo kids, so I could give 2 fucks about Sonic anyway. Wasn't that interested in the game, in the games. They were. To me, because I played Mario first, they were just like a kind of quirky version of Mario, where instead of collecting coins, you collected rings, and you ran around this other planet trying to collect rings and beat shit. Yeah, that was kind of it. So I wasn't really that bothered because Mario was the first game I ever got into.
Sorry to interrupt. It might be the connection tonight. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But you did just say, because I've only just caught that. You did just say beat shit, didn't you?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Because I had to think about that. I heard you and I was like, did he say run around and eat shit? What?
No.
Like,
no, that's not
the game I played.
Town I lived in.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Food. So you had to run around and jump on shit to beat it. So that was kind of my relationship with Sonic, was that it was just like knock off Mario basically. Mm-hmm. But yes, the character was cooler. The design was cooler. He was deliberately targeted at a young audience, whereas Mario was the like porn star version. He was the plumber who went around to fix your sink. So it was one of those. I was never really that bothered. And then in later life, I think it was on the PS2, it might be in the PS3. They released a Sega collection with like loads of old games, and Sonic was on there. And that was probably the first time I played through. I think Sonic and Sonic 2 were on there. And I was just like, oh, whatever, I can't really be fucked. But I remember this show, and I remember when I picked it up. So I watched 1 or 2 before we were going to do the show last time, and was really nonplussed. And then I think I texted you yesterday. The link I'd been using, I couldn't even find on YouTube anymore. It had gone.
Yeah.
So it was. I think they'd moved their channel because I think they might have been taken down or whatever. But so I went back into it and I picked up another episode last night and another one today. And by fuck, I wish I'd been working, because Christ, that would have been more enjoyable.
Yeah, tell me about it. Incidentally, yes, as Mark's just mentioned, they are all available on YouTube for your listeners. I don't think it's an official channel, but they are there. They are available on Netflix in some regions. So if you do have a Netflix subscription, please get it via that.
This particular iteration of Sonic isn't. Sonic Boom, Sonic X, and something else are on Netflix in the UK.
Yes, this one is available for our American friends, I think. But we are very specifically looking at the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. We may talk about some of those others as well. I've not seen most of them, if I'm honest. But this is the one.
I've seen a bit of Sonic X because number 2 was watching it recently, and it's not anywhere near as bad as this. It's still Sonic, so I wasn't that bothered. But it's just been created for a new generation, and obviously a lot of the things that you get away with in the 90s you won't get away with now. So they've kind of retrofit it a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, they made it all Infinity Wars because they're focusing on the Chaos Emeralds and stuff like that. So
yeah, this is the kind of era of Sonic that I remember. Like, it's from this all the way up to, like, he's been through many redesigns as well, but all the way up to sort of, I guess, Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast was the pinnacle for me. That's still probably the one and only Sonic game I can truly say I like. I spent a great deal of time with Sonic Adventure in my late teens, early 20s. But yeah, in general, the games didn't do a lot for me, despite the fact I liked the character. However, at this time, in the kind of early to mid 90s, Sonic was huge, particularly in this country. This is a thing. In the UK, like, Sega definitely kind of won out over Nintendo here. Like, Nintendo was the niche over here, and Sega was the mainstream console. So
I think in terms of handheld, it was the other way because, like, nobody had a fucking Game Gear.
Yeah, well, I had a Game Gear, and it was
the other one person I've ever met who had one. I know people had a fucking Atari Lynx. I never met anyone with a fucking Game Gear.
Right. So I had a Lynx first. So like that Christmas, there was a big discussion about which one I wanted, and I really wasn't sure which of the three I wanted. And my dad knew somebody that worked in a computer shop. This is of no interest to anybody, but you've just taken me on a trip down memory lane now. So he actually arranged for me to go in and have a quick go on each of them. And the Lynx is quite a like that's a deep dive there. So I'm sure some of our listeners know what one looks like. But if you were to put the three consoles side by side, like, the graphics on the Lynx were way better than any of the others. So I was instantly kind of taken with it. So there was myself and one other kid in our school that had a Lynx that Christmas. And so we swapped games like all the time because luckily, like, of the probably about 12 fucking games you could get for the thing, I had 4 and he had about 4. So yeah, and we would just
constantly move them around.
Yeah. So then, as much as I loved it, and I still have it, I still have all of these consoles. I very rarely throw a console away. Sometimes I'll give one to a friend's child or something like that. That's how I've lost my my Wii and my GameCube originally as well, and I've subsequently rebought those consoles. But again, this is boring for people. But anyway, the following Christmas, I was like, yeah, I really love this thing, but there's only so many times I can play the same 8 fucking games. And you know, as it transpired, they did release a few more games aftermarket for the Lynx, and they were all very good, to be fair. But then I ended up just nagging. So my parents and my nan kind of clubbed together that Christmas and got me a Game Boy as well. And then I don't remember how I had the Game Gear, but it was about 2 years later again, I ended up with a Game Gear. I think it might have been because I wanted a TV. I wanted a TV that Christmas, like a little, like a little portable TV thing.
Stick in your bedroom.
My room. Yeah, stick in my bedroom, right. And then the scheming little bastard kid that I was discovered that you get a TV tuner for the Game Gear. So then I was like, well, rather than have a TV in my room, why don't I you could get me a Game Gear, which is about the same price. And then for my birthday, you could get me a TV tuner. And then I've got this little TV that's even better than having one in my room, because I can take it anywhere with me. So I managed to talk my way into a Game Gear as well. Easily the worst of the 3 consoles, incidentally, but that's way off topic. But yeah, that's one of the few console generations, that initial handheld generations, where I managed to wangle my way into all of those consoles, but because they were a lot cheaper as well.
Yeah.
Game Boy far and away the actual best of those consoles.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that sold generation after generation after generation.
It is. However, the Lynx is very, very good, man. Some absolutely excellent games, particularly the Bill and Ted game that they released for it was absolutely superb. But anyway, Sonic was a big thing in this country, is how this came about, right? Because most people had a Mega Drive or a Master System, myself included. I had a Master System, and in fact, Sonic 2 was, I think I've talked about this on the show before. Like, I sold my Master System to contribute towards having a Super Nintendo one Christmas. The deal was like I could have one, but I had to sell the Master System to get some funds in to put towards it. And there was about a 3-month period where I was like, I can't sell this thing because I haven't played Sonic 2. And every week I'd be going on the video shop relentlessly trying to rent Sonic 2, and it was just permanently out. I could never get it. I have still never played the Master System version other than on an emulator. Look, it's shit anyway, so it doesn't matter. But this was
I was going to say, you ain't missing much.
This was a big thing for me, right? Because Sonic was a big thing. I used to read Sonic the comic. I had like a Sonic sticker album and things, and then this show came about. And one of the instant nostalgia hits I had with this show, it's quite interesting actually, because about 2 episodes ago now, or maybe 3, we did Games Master, and we were talking about the weird kind of schedule for Games Master in this country, because it was on Channel 4, which for us was S4C. So instead of getting it on like Wednesday or Thursday night like the rest of the country, we got it super late night, and then we got it repeated on. We were trying to discuss it, and I said I think it was a Sunday. I think it was on a Sunday lunchtime. As soon as the theme started for this, I instantly remembered, like, yes, it was like Games Master was on first. Then this was on straight after it on Sunday lunchtime. And the reason I remember it is because I used to go for Sunday lunch at my nan's every week. And it would be a case of, well, hang on, Sonic is on. So I'm not going for lunch until Sonic is finished. So I would watch this thing on Channel 4 after Games Master. So it formed a kind of block in this country in the early 90s. You had Games Master and then The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah. So it wasn't even really on a mainstream channel. This thing was on fucking S4C. Yeah. So, like, as a kid, I guess what I'm trying to say is it kind of had an air of exclusivity to it, because this wasn't on BBC or CITV, and it wasn't on a Saturday morning or a Tuesday afternoon or anything like that after school. You had to want to watch this thing. Yeah. You know, it kind of felt like this little secret cartoon that only a handful of people knew about. And those people were part of this kind of subculture then that was gaming, you know?
And I mean, that became a kind of a model for not just kids TV, but kind of sort of, you know, youth TV as well. That when they started with stuff like Saved by the Bell and what's the one with Sister, and all, you had all these sort of young, you know, sort of these almost sort of tween and early teen comedies, effectively. So, and yeah, Channel 4 and by default S4C kind of went through a whole period where they bought this shit en masse, and all of a sudden, like, you know, you'd have it, especially during like school holidays, they'd have entire blocks devoted to, like, from 8 in the morning, like they'd cut the big breakfast short.
Yeah.
And then, even if they didn't, even if the big breakfast ran to 8:30, 9 o'clock, then you'd have like kids TV all morning. And then come lunchtime, then they put the fucking Racing at Newmarket or something on, and then you're into like boring shit that nobody really cared about.
Nobody really cared about the horse racing, did they? It always fucking amazed me that like horse racing. It's like, I don't think it's on anymore, is it? But as kids,
it's on like ITV4 or something now.
Like, you guarantee middle of the morning for about 3 hours, Channel 4 would be showing fucking horse racing. Well, boring as hell.
This is how I learned about things like bookies and Racing Post and shit like that, because we used to spend school holidays between both sets of grandparents. And if we were with my father's parents, then it was a case of, right, just have the TV, do what the fuck you want, just stay quiet, or go out and play. Just, you know, we'll feed you, and you know, if one of you has an accident, we'll take you to hospital. But beyond that, just fucking sort yourselves out. With my mother's parents, it was kind of the same, but there was a mountain to go and play on. But every morning at 10 o'clock, we had to go back down the house because my grandfather was walking down into the village to put his bets on for the day. So we had to go with him because he couldn't leave us unattended for that long.
Yeah, I had a similar thing the other way around. I didn't used to stay with my grandparents on my dad's side very often because my grandparents on my mother's side were so close, like they lived just down the road. So I was always there during school holidays. But whenever I did go and stay with my nan, her partner, not my granddad died before I was even born, but her partner was very much into horse racing. And that is one of the primary memories. Like that, spending time with them brings back 2 things instantly. Like the smell of like the cakes and things cooking in the kitchen, because she did used to do like a lot of sort of Welsh cakes and, you know, jam tarts and things like that. Just like real old people cakes, right? So
but it wasn't just like we'll make a dozen or so. It's like we'll make 42.
Yeah.
So, and then tomorrow we'll make another batch. Fuck.
So there's that, and then there's the fucking horse racing that was just permanently on in that house because Reg had his paper out and he'd be going through working out what he was. Never actually went to the betting shop with him, but he was permanently. So yeah, I think that's a generational thing.
Yeah.
I think
Like
that
my grandpa,
generation
he was
loved the
putting like
bookies.
he was like putting on 10 pence on one and 20 on it. He wasn't probably betting on anything. It was just like that's something to do, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it was
exactly.
on all day, and then when the racing finished, he'd have westerns he'd taped and stuff like that, and he'd just be chucking them on. So he's like,
Yep.
all right, TV's gone for the day then. Right, we'll go out and
Yes.
play now then.
Generational thing, definitely. But yeah, that was the kind of shit that you'd see on Channel 4. So
Yeah.
I mean, that was the other level of novelty. Was like, there's something on Channel 4 that I want to fucking watch. So
Yeah.
these Sunday mornings were a big thing, and I actually did used to look forward to this cartoon. I suspected it wouldn't be very good before we went back and looked at it. If I'm honest, I did suspect it would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
It was worse than I anticipated. I did not have a good time. This is one of the few shows I've struggled to make it through. Like, I think I managed to make it all the way through 2 episodes.
I think I
Tried
did.
watching several more, but I got like 5-6 minutes in, and I was like, no, I can't. I can't watch this.
Well, the one I watched last night after I texted you asking if, where I could find it because I couldn't find it where it was a couple of weeks ago. I think I lasted 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's
And
hard,
it was like,
isn't it?
don't get me wrong, it was late because I'm weird and I don't sleep. But I put it on about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And that first episode I was watching, I think it was like episode 3 or episode 4 in the run, I can't remember. But I was thinking, fuck, I really can't be asked.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like there've been stuff on the show we've struggled through, and there's been stuff certainly on Better Than Mario recently that we've really struggled through. And it's rare you give it that little shot. But after 7 minutes, you know what? Fuck this. I'm gonna bed. I don't sleep. I'd rather go and lie in a bed where it's hot as fuck anyway, because we're still in the middle of this bloody heat wave, and I would rather just go and lie there for 6 hours than try and watch this shit. As it turned out, I lasted about 20 minutes and got up, did some work, but still, it was like that's kind of my depth of feeling with this show. And then when I put it back on today, I was working from home today, so I had my iPad on the desk in front of me with it on while I was working. And again, I just didn't pay any fucking attention, and that's the only reason I got through the rest of that episode and then one more.
Yeah, it's really, really fucking tough. And I know exactly why that is. I clocked it, within 10 minutes of the first episode. It's just so fucking badly written. Like, the animation isn't that bad. The animation is perfectly serviceable.
For the time,
it's good in
passable.
places. Yeah,
for the time, it's decent. I think you're right. I think the writing is awful. The performances, because the writing is awful, they're all chewing the fucking furniture anyway.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Some of the performances I think are actually quite good. It's just that the characters are so fucking abrasive and annoying. Well, I mean, they really get under your skin.
They created new characters for it as well. That was always a risk.
Yeah.
Because you had Sonic and Tails and Robotnik, and then they brought in the chicken. What was the mole's name? Scratch. What was the mole's name?
Scratch, Grounder,
and
Coconuts.
Coconuts. Yeah. So introducing new characters is always going to be a risk with something like that because people are very invested. And if you compare it to, say, the Mario cartoon, which we looked at about 2-3 years ago now, they didn't really. I mean, yes, okay, they tweaked things and they tweaked the princess, they tweaked the Toad and stuff, but actually, you recognized everybody when you went into it, and you recognized the world they were in. And this was so far removed because apart from having Sonic, Tails, and Robotnik, it didn't seem like the same world. It didn't look the same. Like you didn't have the the green on top and so the browns, the brown hash underneath. Didn't have any of that. The bits I saw, you didn't have anything to do with the rings. And so it was like, hang on, we've just licensed the property, we've licensed the characters, and we're going to shoehorn them into something else.
Yeah, it does feel like that because there's also like the overarching story, if you can call it that, is quite literally that Robotnik just wants to catch Sonic and can't.
Yeah.
It's practically Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner or Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny, if you prefer, or Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny, or any of those iterations of here's a bad guy who wants the good guy.
Just because they want them.
Yeah, just, at least with the Mario shows, they had the overarching plot of Mario would always be on a quest because Bowser would have a scheme that week and things like that. But there's none of that with this. Robotnik just constantly wants to catch Sonic. The characters that you mentioned they created, Scratch and Grounder and all, they're supposed to be these super bounty hunters that he's made up from all the best bits of all the other bounty hunters, but they've gone wrong. Yeah. And so he just dispatches them week on week, to try and catch Sonic, and then
it's kind of the Power Rangers formula as well, isn't it?
I mean, what transpires then is just Sonic is completely passive as a hero because he's just constantly running away to outsmart them. Really,
yeah,
they're trying to catch him, so they've got all of the kind of forward momentum in the story. But what you get, and these episodes are like 24, 25 minutes. They're not short.
Yeah.
And you just get this hodgepodge of gags, like some of which are actually quite funny.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like I did have a few laughs.
Yeah.
It's quite witty in places, but nothing hangs together because it's just like this collection of skits, very loosely hung together. There will be a theme for that week, like maybe like some of the ones I tried to watch. There was one where he had like a shrinking ray. There was with a Robotnik hit Sonic with. There's one where there was an aging gun that he hit Sonic with. There's one where there's an alien crash on the planet and they're both trying to win. So there'd always be like a theme of the week, but the central thing would always be we need to catch Sonic. No explanation of why.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense because even in the very basic narrative of the game, you had the whole thing of like Robotnik was capturing the animals, turning them into robots, and wanted the Chaos Emerald so he could take over. Like, so there was a basic narrative there that Sonic could have impetus to go and free these animals and things.
Yeah.
But instead they flip it on its head. And he just, I've no interest in it whatsoever. Like every episode that I tried to watch, the same thing happened. Like I'd get 5 minutes in and I'd just be like, what is this story about? Because this is just a bunch of gags, like one after the other after the other. You know, and I think as a kid, I probably responded to it because it doesn't look like the game. You're right. But I do actually think the art direction and the art style of it is quite good. And it's very fitting for the early 90s. It's got that kind of pastel Nicktoons kind of flavor to it.
Yeah.
You know, which a lot of early 90s stuff did. Animation wise, you know, it wouldn't be out of place next to kind of anything that you would have seen on Toonami or Cartoon Network or anything like that. All of the Hanna-Barbera stuff that was going on at those times, it was pretty fluid. You know, it's not fantastic animation, and the movements are very cartoony and exaggerated, and there's a lot of business, as Walt Disney would have called it, you know, a lot of slapstick comedy and stuff in there. But it worked. So all of that's fine. It is purely down to the writing. And as you say, I think even those performances, like, look, Scratch, like, it's an appropriate name because it is like nails on a blackboard, that performance. But that's not the fault of the performer. That's the fault of the writing. You know, and the character that he's been given, you know, it's not, I mean, it's Phil Hayes. It's not his fault. It's not like he's some nobody either, you know? And if anything, like, you get character coming through in his performance as well. You know, like the laugh that Scratch has is very distinctive. You know, he's got that ha 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 kind of laugh. Yeah. Yes, it's annoying.
But that's character. That's fine.
That's character building, yeah. But it's just the constant, like, him and Grounder are so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
That you just like, you're supposed to be the elite here, guys. You're supposed to be. So there's nothing those performances can do because there's no real, other than what they give them, like those laughs and things like that, there's no real character there.
No, that's right. And like to a point where I think it was in one of the first ones I watched, they end up snatching Tails and basically getting Sonic to get in a cage of his own accord because otherwise they'll hurt Tails. So you get that, and he's locked in the cage, and then all of a sudden he pulls out the bat phone from Grounder because obviously he's got a phone in him. Yeah, why not? And then they do this, and then, so Sonic immediately hatches a plan because Coconuts turns up, and it's like, hang on, oh fuck, you've already caught him. You don't need to do anything else.
No, you have him. Yeah,
and it's like, hang on, why are you being so fucking dumb?
Yeah, that's the thing, and every episode goes exactly the same. It's like we need to catch Sonic. We've almost caught Sonic. Oh no, something's gone wrong. We're fucking idiots. That's every episode.
Yeah,
and that gets old very, very quickly.
And there's some classic cartoon stuff as well. Like, you know, again in that episode where they do end up getting him in the cage, they didn't know. They attract, again, very Bugs Bunny, very very sort of Hanna-Barbera, Warner Bros. stuff. They have a puppet of an attractive woman. So Sonic runs past it and immediately comes back and falls in love with it. And then they end up whacking him over the head. He falls in a pit. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And then he escapes using his cartoon powers because that's exactly what the Roadrunner would do.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I didn't mind that. That was great.
Look, that's fine for 5 minutes at a clip, like a Roadrunner cartoon would be.
But 25 minutes of that gets
doesn't
really
work.
fucking dull.
If it's going to be 25 minutes, Like, we need threat escalation. We
Yeah,
need
you need to
character
start, a middle, and an end.
development. Yeah, and look, I know this is a kid's show, and we've said that many, many times before when we're talking about things in this show as well, but the same principles of story apply. You know, you still need, as you said, Mark, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You need a plot. You need threat escalation. You need character development. You need all of these things because, fuck me, it's hard to keep my attention for 25 minutes. Try keeping a 10-year-old's attention for 25 minutes. That's even fucking harder.
And that's the difference, I think, because I said number 2 was watching, is either Sonic X or Sonic Boom. I think it was Sonic X. It would have been a couple of weeks ago, so I think it wasn't long after we saw Sonic 2 in cinema. And they're 20, 25 minutes. No, they're on Netflix. They're 22, 24 minutes, something like that. No, 25 minutes at a clip. But he sat there for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Just watching episode after episode because it hung together. And I'd be interested to see. And he probably isn't your atypical 8-year-old, but I wouldn't mind trying to sit him down in front of this and saying, right, we'll watch a couple of these, see what you think. I can't see him sitting, he does. No, he's 8. He doesn't pay attention to any fucking thing. I can't see him sitting through one of these and going, "Oh yeah, that was good." I just can't see it.
That's the thing. Like I've been trying. Like I did like this as a kid, definitely. And when I say kid, like I would have been.
It would have been 10, 12.
I would have been. I was about to say 11, 12ish probably when this was on Channel 4, right? So I'm not a young kid either.
Yeah, I think it was 93 to 95. So yeah, I'd have been.
Yeah, I'd have been
about
12ish, right? And I'm reading Sonic the comic and stuff, so I'm target audience, and you're following Games Master, so
yeah,
like it's fine. I'm here anyway, so I'm gonna watch it. But I have relatively fond memories of it, so there must have been something there for me as a kid. Either that, or I was a fucking dumb kid. Now, that is entirely fucking possible.
So right? There may be a debate to have there. I don't know.
Yeah, that is entirely possible. Okay. But, I'm looking back on it, and I'd like to think I was more discerning as a child than this.
Well, I don't know, because, I think populism is a huge part of it, especially when you're a kid, because if it's a property that people like, you kind of feel obliged to give it a shot. And even that translates to adulthood as well. But as a kid, you're more inclined to think, right, okay, well, all my friends are watching this, so I'll give it a look.
Yeah.
And I'll even if I don't really like it, I'll grin and bear it because everybody else likes it and everyone else is talking about it, and I'll have something to fit in with. I won't be the one who doesn't like it.
Yeah.
So that there's an element of that with all things. Kids. Be that TV, be that films, be that sports, be that whatever. And I think that may be part of it. But I remember. When I put this show on, remembered surprisingly little about it before we started watching it. And then when I put it on, I remembered Scratch, I remembered Grounder. I certainly remembered the design of Grounder because I remember thinking at the time it was a bit like Short Circuit, but with a round head.
Yes, very much so.
It was like, hang on, when's he going to call somebody a snowblower?
Yeah.
And so I remember design. Didn't remember Coconuts at all. And I didn't remember any of the sort of quote unquote stories. I didn't remember anything about the show, but I just remembered those two characters specifically. But yeah, it was one of those that I know a lot of my friends liked it, but it was one of it always baffled me because like none of us liked Sonic as a game.
Yeah, that's the thing. Whereas I have the complete opposite. As I say, I remember Sonic being huge, but I don't really remember anybody else watching this show. But that may have been just because it was in such a niche time slot.
Maybe
it would have been something like 12:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah,
well, I think with us, like because we played like football and rugby on a weekend, so we'd have been coming in at that time, stinking, covered in mud. Dinner'd be about an hour. So by the time we've come in, my brother's had a shower, I've had a shower, and then food's ready. So this was kind of right. While you're waiting for the shower, stick the TV on, and this is on.
Yeah.
Or if we haven't played this week, then that's what we watch on a Sunday, so we'll put it on anyway. So yeah, I mean, it was one of those that and like a lot of my friends were playing the same sports in the same team, so we were all doing the same thing. We were all getting home about 12. That was 12. So it was the thing you chucked on while you're waiting for your dinner. And yeah, it's just one like I think it's sort of stemmed from that really.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest nostalgia hit I had was that initial kind of memory of it following Games Master, and also the theme tune. Like I'd forgotten the theme tune entirely, but then as soon as it started, I knew it instantly, and I kind of that ties into to that very particular era. Like I don't necessarily tie that with the Sonic games, even though they used parts of the theme from the Sonic games. It just took me back to that, like Sonic the comic era and stuff like that, where it's like, yes, I associate this tune with that, because you take kind of, they've got the Sonic theme tune and they sort of blend it in within the Hall of the Mountain King from the Peer Gynt suites.
Yes.
And it all works beautifully well. And it actually works really well for that character as well, because it's got real pace and stuff, and it's quite exciting. You know, the credits are great. Like, as I was watching it, as soon as I saw the credits in the first episode I was rolling, I was like, okay, maybe this is going to be all right, actually, because I'm loving these credits.
Had the same thought, and
because the animation again is good in them. Yeah, the animation's good in the credits as well. And then, as you say, you see Scratch and Grounder in there, who I'd forgotten about as well. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, because there's those as well. So yeah, I was really quite up for it. My initial nostalgia buzz was quite high, and then within like probably 5-10 minutes, I was just, oh my god, this is terrible. And then you go through, you know, I watched the entirety of the first episode I watched. So then you go through the thing of like, oh well, maybe that was just a poor one. So I'll pick another one at random.
There was an unaired pilot as well.
Was there?
Yeah, which was done in. It was produced in August 1992. A couple of different cast members.
Right.
Apparently, looked largely the same. But yeah, different cast, and then they didn't introduce Scratch and Grounder until the actual first episode. Then when it moved forward.
Yeah, so that would have been the first one that I watched, was the introduction of Scratch and Grounder. And even the way they do that makes no fucking sense. Yeah. It's all done in flashback. Yeah. Like, well, what's the... Why? Why did you do that? There's no need to have done that. It makes no story sense whatsoever, other than to give you a skit at the front where they're trying to catch him.
Yeah, and then like the whole thing of like he makes Scratch, and then to make Grounder, he's going to clone him by taking one of his tail feathers and dropping it into some sort of magic machine. Except it makes a fucking tank mole thing instead. I know you're not really looking for logic in a show like this, but even though you've got some semblance of system in a show.
And then they're bounty hunters for some reason.
Yeah,
it's not explained why there's a bounty out on Sonic in the first place.
No,
why they're bounty hunters.
It's like $1 billion or whatever their equivalent is.
Yeah, because to suggest that there's a bounty out on Sonic suggests that actually he's the criminal here. And
well, this is the thing, and I mean, it's kind of it's a trope that's misused. This whole thing of putting a bounty on somebody, because the bounty is that Johnny Law puts it on a criminal they can't catch, so somebody goes out and gets them.
Yes,
that's what a bounty's for.
Yes, it's not Dr. Robotnik decides he's going to put a bounty on Sonic because he wanted. That's a hit. That's a totally different thing.
Absolutely, I was going to say that. No, that's what you get in the mafia, whereby they say, right, this person has wronged me. He looked at me the wrong way, or he said my daughter was hot. Everybody has to go and kill him straight away.
Yeah, that's a hit.
Yeah, that's an entirely different thing. And when you have like a convention of fucking bounty hunters, that's just a fucking sales pitch, isn't it?
Yeah, so I didn't understand any of that, but that's the kind of random shit. It's got that kind of throw it all at the wall and see what sticks approach, which we've had in a number of shows.
Yes.
And generally we end up praising those shows as well, because generally more sticks than falls off.
Yeah, generally when you have that sort of frenetic energy, it kind of pays off. But the problem with this is that because Sonic as a character is literally faster than anything anyway, you can't, even in trying to keep up with him, you're on the go constantly. So then when you add that to the fact that you've got this batshit plot every week that you're trying to make stick, and they're trying to ram through it as quickly as they can to get as many gags as they can, because it's even described as a gag-driven show. So if that's what
I would agree
on, if that's what they're concentrating on, that then takes time off the story. So you're constantly trying to keep up, and because it's so fast-paced anyway, you end up going, what the fuck is going on? Oh, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah, and it's just such a, like, if you want a gag-driven show, it doesn't have to be Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, I know it's a license. It's an easy license, okay? But if you're making a Sonic the Hedgehog show, then it kind of needs to be an action-adventure show. Particularly bearing in mind, yes, we're on the tail end of it, but we're on the tail end of the era of TMNT, Bike and Bicycle from Mars, Street Sharks, Samurai Pizza Cats. Like, anthropomorphic animals on adventures are a thing. So run with that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the bit I don't understand.
And even then, you think, well, you've paid for the license, so why not just make, not necessarily a version of the game, but a follow-on where you have that same kind of formula. Now, there is a story there. There's a narrative there. You have your action-adventure bit. You have your quests. And fine, and you can do that. That works, and there's no reason to not do that. And I think that I mean, we talked about when we did Sonic on Who Wins a couple of months back. We talked about the new films as well. Now, I have seen both of them now. I hadn't at the time. I'd only seen the first one. But that's kind of what they do. And they've obviously, cinema has evolved, and so storytelling has become a bit more sophisticated in kids' products since the early 90s. But that's exactly what you get. You get a quest, you have stakes, you have character development, and then you have a resolution.
Yes.
And you could have done that quite easily in the 25 minutes an episode you had here. But instead, they went, you know what, let's spunk out 65 episodes. We can syndicate it within a year. And then we'll just make a shit ton of money because Sonic's popular and everybody loves Sonic.
And that's exactly what it feels like, isn't it? It's a gag machine with Sonic's face plastered on it. You know, they did.
Yes.
They did add, at least I think it came from here. It might have come from Sonic the comic, but I think it came from here and then just bled through the character. You know, they did add some character information for Sonic.
Yeah, the chili dogs came from here.
Yeah, exactly. The chili dogs was where I was going with that. There's things like that, and that's a thing now. Like we know Sonic likes chili dogs.
Yeah, that's canon. That's taken. And when you get into the later products, you get into Sonic X, Sonic Boom, the new films. I'm not sure about any comics because I've not read any Sonic comics, but that's just part of the character now. It's just that's just something that we know, and that's fine. That works. And there are bits of that which think, okay, actually, that's been done pretty well. That's been seeded pretty well. The problem is they could have made this show about anybody. They could have made an entirely new character. It probably wouldn't have sold as well because it's not Sonic, but the show could have been exactly the same. And I think that's a shame. And like we've talked about it before with various products, that they didn't have to necessarily be done the way they were done. They didn't necessarily have to use the license, and they could have been their own thing. Now, for me, the character they had in terms of the wisecracking, smart ass, can get out of anything sort of character, it felt less like Sonic than it did. I've got to remember how they did this. In this country, Dennis the Menace was in the Beano, and Dennis was the little blonde kid next to Mr. Wilson, yeah?
Correct.
In America, that was Dennis the Menace.
That was Dennis the Menace. Yeah, that will never be Dennis the Menace to me.
No, it's Dennis.
Yeah.
It's just Dennis. Dennis the Menace is in the Beano with the red and black stripes. Yeah. So the character of Sonic in this feels more akin to that Dennis.
Yes.
Where smart ass, inadvertently causing a bit of trouble, but you know what?
He's a punk.
Yeah,
is what he is.
He's a punk. Bitch.
Yeah, he's a little street punk, is what he is in this.
And that character didn't really feel like it fitted.
No, it's something now that is inherent in the character, and actually, now that we talk about it, and I'm starting to piece this together in my head, this may be where it started to go wrong for me, because I think Sonic, as we know him as a character, as technology evolved and we're able to add voice into things and stuff as well, and as more of these adaptations happened, like this is the route they went down, like this kind of troublesome teenager smart ass route with him, and the chili dogs and they gotta go fast and all of that nonsense.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, you know, the first couple of games, when you look at that, and he would later be redesigned and stuff as well, but when you look at that initial design of Sonic, you know, the finger wagging and the cocked eyebrow and the, like, yes, he's cocky, but it's more that kind of just suave confidence that he's got rather than kind of just shit-eating energy.
Yeah.
It's more like quietly, coolly confident is what it is. Whereas this is the complete opposite of that. He is not cool at all in this cartoon. He's going 110 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
And he, like you say, he's just like this frantic little, just smart ass punk.
Yeah.
And that's not what the original character was.
No.
Like,
and I think
like
for me,
imagine that original character now popping up in the original title screen and wagging his finger at you and giving you the rock eyebrow.
Yeah.
That's a totally different kind of energy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that is possibly what put me off in the episodes I watched, is because I didn't like the presentation of the character.
No,
and it may be that it may be that I was never particularly keen on Sonic anyway. It may be having seen later iterations where they've done a lot more character work and they've actually made the character. Yes, okay, he's still got that cockiness, he's still got that almost arrogance, but there are elements of doubt. There are times he fails, and actually, we kind of root for him. Whereas in this, I've got the wiki page in front of me with some episode description. Yes, he does get caught quite a lot, but always escapes. And you're thinking, actually, I don't want him to escape. I want him to get caught and then somebody to drop an anvil on the fucking cage.
Yeah.
And just crush the little bastard. Fucker.
Yeah. Just push him out in front of a bus or something. Like,
yeah, probably damage
what happens to hedgehogs in it. Like,
yeah.
Or trucks in it. It's trucks.
Yeah.
It's trucks with hedgehogs.
You get Rowan Atkinson and Mel Smith running them over.
Yeah, it's trucks. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I was ever that like that enamored with the character from this point forward, and I think that is, I think you've hit it. That's why I will say that I have always been enamored with Tails from the very first time I saw him. I don't know what it is. There's something about Tails that I've always just loved, and I think actually Tails is a character that does come across quite well in this as well. Like they give him that kind of adventurous little brother kind of energy. Which is exactly what was there from day one in the game, you know, and then they would later bolt on the stuff about being him being like a mechanic and inventor and stuff like that, which isn't really present here. But he's definitely got that kind of adventurous, mischievous little brother kind of energy
on
to
the adventure and inadvertently saves the day.
Yes, yeah. So I do like Tails. But
I think possibly Tails is the only good character from what I've seen anyway in the show. Nobody else I have any time for.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the performance of Robotnik is quite good, but as a character and again as a villain, he's too pantomime sneering, and there's just no layers there at all. And you know, this might sound like we're being harsh, but you know, because it's a kids show. But then when you think of some of the shows that we've looked at here,
and from this time as well,
from this time, you know, but you know, even when you look at something as, and I really feel bad using this word, but it's right in context. When you look at it as a villain, as basic as a Skeletor, even Skeletor has a lot of depth to him. Like, yes, he's the embodiment of evil on He-Man, right? But he's got depth. Like, he's got interplay with all of his minions. He's got a relationship with Evil Lyn. There's a reason he's the way he is. You know, there's all the stuff with him being the king's brother and stuff as well. Like, there's depth. Right, and yet most people just think of him as the cackling skull from He-Man.
Yeah.
Right, but that came from somewhere. Whereas with Robotnik here, they've done none of that. You know, and even again when you go to the Mario show and Cooper is there instead of Bowser, but there's an element of depth there as well with him. You know, actually being madly in love with Daisy and wanting to kidnap her, and then you know later they would bring in the Cooper kids and stuff like that, and there's all the power play between them all. So again, like you've got all of those siblings vying for attention, and your villains have got depth and they've got reason for doing what they're doing. Whereas here, Robotnik's just like, I want him. That hedgehog, you know, that's literally what it is. You know, it's like
I want that wascally wabbit.
Yeah, and that's what it is, and that would be fine in 5-minute clips, but not for half an hour. Well, 25 minutes, and then we get a couple of minutes of, which I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. We get a couple of minutes at the end of Sonic Says.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any Sonic Says on the episode that you watched.
Wow. I'd forgotten they existed. I've got to be honest. I don't know how.
Says with a Z as well, by the way, listeners. This is SEZ. Sonic Says, because it's the 90s and Sonic's full of attitude. Yeah. Look, these were traditional, all right, in cartoons of this era. You know, they exist for a purpose, right? They're there because essentially, if your cartoon was too violent or if your cartoon was blatantly targeted at children to sell toys, you had to find an educational reason for it to be on the air. You had to add value. It had to educate, inform, and entertain, right? Just like the old standards of the BBC. All right. So you couldn't just have He-Man for 20 odd minutes because you blatantly wanted to sell Masters of the Universe toys and he was punching people in the face.
Yeah.
Because that's got no wholesome educational value for the kids, right? So that's why at the end of every episode of He-Man, he'd be like, hey, kids, bullying's bad. Don't do that, right? But they would all be generally the same kind of things, right? They would be, don't go off with strangers, don't bully people.
Don't take candy from strangers.
Yeah, all of that. These, I can't make my mind up if they're actually taking the piss or not.
Oh, yeah, I think they must be.
They're so fucking random, the stuff he's talking about.
Yeah, like I know Family Guy did a skit on it in one of the early seasons. Because in America you used to have The More You Know, didn't you? So they'd come up at the end of shows and they'd just be, it wouldn't be anything to do with the show, wouldn't be anybody who was in the show. It was just like a random public service announcement. And Family Guy took the piss out of that. And these kind of gave me the same vibe as that, where it's like, we know we've got to do it, so we'll just put any old shit on. That'll get us past the censors. It'll get us past standards and practices, and we don't really need to worry about what the content is. Because the content is wholesome, the content is fine, and we'll get away with it. It doesn't have to be relevant to anything at all.
And it really, like, they were so bonkers. You know, like generally, like I say, it is things like yeah, don't take candy from strangers, never return to a lit firework, don't lick your finger and put it in the plug socket. It's stuff like that. These were just bonkers. They were like, they literally were like, hey kids, don't eat the yellow snow, basically. It was fucking stupid.
I'm surprised they didn't have a Be Kind Rewind one.
Like, yeah, that's the kind of thing it was. Rather than actual safety tips, it was just like, here's some general information to make you less of a dick from probably the biggest dick you've ever seen on TV.
I was going to say, yeah.
Like, what a fucking mental idea. And then the fact that it's spelled SEZ as well. So any educational value that it might have had is already flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
Because you're teaching kids, I guess, at proto text speak at that point.
Yeah.
Like, what a fucking... I'd completely forgotten they existed, but they were so fucking random.
Yeah.
Like, that. Here's what I will say to you, listeners. If you got any interest in this at all, see if you can just find a collection on YouTube of the Sonic Says segments, because they are entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, for all the wrong reasons.
They're fucking mental, but they're entertaining.
Yeah, they are, like, for all the wrong fucking reasons.
Yeah.
Go and watch those. It's literally like, kids, don't lick your mum's razor. Do you know what I mean?
I knew a son had done that.
Yeah, it's that fucking stupid. Like, I was just in bits watching them. So, if anything, go and watch Sonic Says.
Yeah, maybe that's what you need, is just a collection of those rather than episodes.
Yeah, maybe, because the episodes, fuck me. I'm trying to find something good to say about them. We have said, like, I do like the theme a great deal. I really do. Like, I've actually been listening to the theme before we started. But that's because, like, the Sonic the Hedgehog theme is obviously ingrained from my youth anyway.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of those themes that you will just randomly start humming at 3 a.m. because it's there. And again, nobody can say Sonic the Hedgehog without you going, Sonic the Hedgehog, he's a fucking hedgehog. It's just, it's there, right? It's just there. Those are not the official words or anything, kids, all right? But it's just there, right? And then the fact that, it's sort of teed up with Pig and Sweet as well, which, music snobs, come at me all you want. Probably my favorite piece of classical music. So come at me. I don't care.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Right. So it's just great. It's a great little theme. I will enjoy listening to it numerous times while I'm editing the intro for this show. And then I'll probably never hear it again. But I did get a nice little kick from that. So if I can say anything good about it, it's that the music is good.
Yeah.
The title sequence, full stop, is good. Like, so what we're saying is watch the titles.
Best thing about the whole fucking show.
Yeah. Watch the titles. Watch Sonic Says. Ignore everything in the middle. And you'll be
the 20 minutes in the middle, just forget it exists.
Yeah. I think, even that stuff in the middle is so fucking bad. Like, it's Raccoon's level. And I think it's actually worse. I think this is now the new low.
Like, yeah, this is the new rock bottom.
Yes, I think it is, because like we've dunked on Raccoons quite a lot, and I think that was just because we were so disappointed because we loved it so much as kids. And the reason we started dunking on it was much of the same sort of points as we've raised here, is that those episodes didn't really go anywhere. And as a kid, I thought that they did. I thought there was a far more sort of interconnected, overarching story in Raccoons, which it transpired there wasn't. But this is even more criminal from that point of view. Like, I think the Raccoons is a higher quality show to start with, is the thing.
Yeah.
And it has the added benefit of, like, not that I don't have nostalgia for this, but again, the Raccoons is one of those shows that is really up there from your childhood. So
yeah, and I think as well from that perspective, the Raccoons got repeated. It would have been about 98, 99 on BBC Two in the morning. So you'd have that, and you'd have like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Smurfs. There'd be like a block on BBC Two. So before you went to school, you'd chuck that on because it's more interesting than the fucking news. And when you're a kid who wants to watch the news, and now I don't want to watch it for different
news now.
Yeah. I see, but that's for different reasons.
Yeah,
that's just because everything's gone to shit. But yeah, so like this, Raccoons was replayed run 97, 98, I think, in the mornings on BBC Two, like between, I think there was a block between about 7 and 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock. I was left for school by 8:30, so I don't know if there was anything after 8:30. But yes, you always had that kind of block, and Raccoons, and I think that's kind of the thing that did it for me, was that I didn't remember it being that bad, even on second watching.
Yeah.
And I think that was the disappointment. Whereas this, I've not thought about in 30 years. And I was blissfully ongoing with that. When it came up, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. I like that. and that little nagging thing in the back of my head going, "You like that? It was probably shit. You're going to be disappointed."
That's the thing, in it. It does seem whenever we really like the show, more often than not, they turn out to be shit. But
yeah,
like even with Raccoons, like as disappointing as they were because they weren't as good as we remembered them. Like I never had to stop watching it. I've never any single show we've ever done. I've never had to turn an episode off. I've always managed to make it through quite a few. Whereas this, I was just like, I fucking can't.
Even if I'm only watching one, and I'll say I've got a couple of days and I'll pick up a couple, or I've got a half hour, or it's late and I'll stick something on before I go to bed. I'll never. I try not to do it with films either. Sometimes you just find yourself falling asleep, but generally, and that's the time I watch films rather than any indication of the quality of the film usually. But generally, I will say, right, I'll watch to the end because I've started, I'll finish. I'm not.
Yeah.
I can't go back to it halfway through.
No.
And very rarely do that. I think I did it for In the Name of the King. I think I don't think I did it on Versus because I was just too fucking traumatized. But yeah, last night I got 7 minutes into an episode. I was like, "Fuck this noise! I'm going to bed."
I've done it several times, especially because we knocked this episode back as well. I have really tried to go back and make it through some of these, and I've tried multiple times, and every time I get a couple of minutes in, and I'm just like, no, I can't do this. There's no story. It's all over the shop. The gags are just coming rapid fire, and more are missing than are hitting.
Yeah.
Like when they do hit, they're funny, but there's just nothing to engage my interest.
And I think the problem as well is that the gags that are coming, they're so fucking puerile. I mean, if you look at something, I mean, we as it was a while ago now, but I think it was last summer we did Recess.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at that, it's an entirely different type of show. Obviously, the pacing's a lot different, but the humor is very different as well. And the gags, they're not so in your face. They're a lot more subtle, but they land a lot better. And I'd say probably with those, 90% of them land.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd say with this, you'd be struggling to say 10% of them land. Because it's just, as you said, chuck as much mud at a wall as you can and see what sticks. And none of them land. None of the jokes make sense. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking appalling. This show is absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
By any yardstick, whether it's a kid's show, whether we're looking as a family show, whether we're looking as a media tie-in, an adaptation, by any yardstick, this show is absolutely appalling and definitely the new low.
Yeah, and I think it's disappointing as well because, and I mean, I know you said you haven't done them, but having seen some of the newer stuff, and having seen the 2 new films certainly, but having seen, I'm sure it was Sonic X I was watching with number 2, and the way that's put together, the way the story is, okay, there are new characters in that I think have been introduced in games through the years, certainly in other media, but all of these characters are rounded, they're fleshed out, they all have flaws, they all have desires, they all have an arc, and all of a sudden you're going, right, okay, well. No, they introduce. You get Knuckles is in it. You get the pink one whose name I can't remember.
Amy Rose.
That's the one. And then you get Shadow and stuff. And all of a sudden, there's like, okay, now we're building an arc. We're building an actual season.
Yeah.
And it's all about the the Chaos Emeralds.
Not the Infinity Stones.
No, not at all.
Gov.
Not at all. They're not even the same colors, boss. Honest. But yeah, so I mean, it's they've built an arc. They've built a story. It says, right, we can have 3 seasons out of this.
Yeah.
Or however many we want. But we can run with this and we can actually build a product that is worth watching. And don't get me wrong, I don't think anybody came out of this thinking, you know what, we'll just chuck 65 episodes of absolute horse wank together and it'll do. That's just what the result was. I don't think anybody came out of it thinking, you know what, it's shit, but we're getting paid, so fuck it, who cares? Whereas when you compare this with later versions, you think actually either they didn't care or they didn't know any better.
I think it was just a fundamental misunderstanding of the license and what it was.
They licensed the characters, not the stories, is the problem.
Yeah, and video game adaptions have always been bad at that. And, they're better these days, but you can argue they're still, by and large, pretty bad at that. We've said this so many times on so many shows now, but when you want to adapt a story or a character or whatever from one media to the other, from one medium to another, you have to concede that it isn't the same and you are going to have to make changes. And sometimes that means that you've got to develop on what is already there. And sometimes it means you need to knock it down entirely and start again.
Yeah.
And sometimes that will work and sometimes it won't. See, for instance, the Mario film, the Mario cartoons that we've talked about, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, right? Like all of them, completely different storylines. None of them really have much resemblance to the game, other than this is what the characters look like. Okay, but they kind of decided to take it down our route. Okay,
yeah. Especially the film. I mean, if you look at the film as a prime example of that.
Yeah. Now the problem is with video games, especially those early ones, you didn't have the source material, right? So a lot of that adaptation is happening from scratch. You're just taking those characters and just trying to build a world around them. And it feels like the guys that did this have sort of tried to go down that route, but actually, it's like, I think maybe they've seen what's gone on with things like Mario when we'd had Double Dragon cartoon and stuff by this time as well. So they'd seen all of that going on, and they'd perhaps seen how poor they are and just thought, well, let's just try and make it as simple as possible. And I don't know, that may not be their thought process, but that's what it feels like to me, because I don't believe anyone sets out to make a half-assed job of anything, right? I don't believe anybody sets out to make something, even when they know it's a surefire hit with a license and it's an easy payday, right? I don't think anybody in a creative industry sets out to go, yeah, that'll do. And if they do, then they're in the wrong industry, right? So I don't think that's the case. What I do think is them looking and going, well, you know, if we try and expand on this world, you know, we're going to end up with something like Mario or Double Dragon, and it's going to get convoluted, and it's going to be silly, and there's going to be pushback. So let's just make it as simple as possible.
And I think in the 90s as well, I mean, you had the benefit as such, you didn't have the internet. So,
yes.
You know, you put a product out, and actually by the time you finish, by the time it's aired and we've seen it, you've finished, and you go, you know what? Okay, it didn't work the way we wanted it to. We can move on. Yes, okay, there may be some questions to answer from people who put money into it, people who produced it, whatever else. But by and large, we made a product we said we were going to make. Now with the internet, unfortunately, the internet's a wonderful tool, but also it's full of fucking assholes.
Hello.
And the problem with assholes is that there's like opinions. Everyone's got one. And the internet means that through the anonymity of your keyboard, you can make a fake name and talk as much shit as you like about what you do and don't like. And there's no comeback. You can do what the fuck you like. And actually, there's a very apparent knock on with that when it comes to content, where people go, oh, well, actually, yeah, the fans didn't like that. So we can kind of move away from that. And then you end up not having the product you want to make because you're so worried about how the fans are going to receive it that you either think, right, we have to make a completely faithful adaptation.
Yep.
And at some point, something's got to give. See Game of Thrones. Now they said, right, okay, we want to make it faithful. We want to do this, we want to do that. And actually, A, they've not been able to do it because they haven't had the budget. B, they haven't had the technology. C, it hasn't been fucking written yet, so they don't know they don't know where it's going. So you can't make a faithful adaptation. The problem is with that, they didn't understand, as you said, they weren't then trying to adapt. They were trying to recreate the book on screen.
Yeah.
And they're not the only ones who are guilty of that. You see that in lots of places. But because you have the internet now, people are so fucking vocal and so quick to jump and shit on absolutely anything that people are afraid to try anything.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly what this is. I think you've just actually put that over a lot better than I did. I think this is a creative team looking at the game and just going, how do we literally translate that onto screen? But then fundamentally misunderstanding it, because instead of actually playing the game and understanding the game, they've looked at the smart-ass hedgehog that pops up at the title screen and gone, oh, okay, he's a smart-ass and he runs really fast.
Yeah.
This is going to be a comedy show.
Yes.
Instead of actually playing through the game, start to finish, and realizing that actually Sonic's the aggressor and he's going after Robotnik because Robotnik is kidnapping the animals and turning them into robots. And like, look, I'm not saying you have to put layers on this, and I'm not saying it has to be smart, but straight away, okay, you have a much better show there where, particularly in the early 90s, you've got messages, you know, bear in mind Captain Planet and stuff's around this time as well. You have messages about industrialization and ruining the planet and the ozone layer, and all of that can all be built in here, and you can create a world for these characters to play in instead of just giving us just absolute horse shit that means nothing for 20 odd minutes at a clip. And that's the annoying thing about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably I won't say I'm more disappointed with this than I was with Raccoons, because I liked Raccoons a lot more.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, this is definitely a new low, and I'd say it's possibly the worst thing we've watched in a while, and I include fucking Versus and 2025.
Oh, yeah, it's steady on. It's not worse than 2025.
I lasted longer than 7 minutes watching that.
I mean, for listeners who don't listen to our other shows,
why the
first
fuck
of all,
not?
Yeah, do. Secondly, we've watched not possibly, definitely the worst film I've ever seen.
It's the greatest
recently.
atrocity ever to emerge from Germany.
Now, I almost stopped watching that as well, and were it not for the fact that podcast needs us to specifically go beat by beat through the narrative,
and you paid for it,
and I paid for it, I don't think I could have made it through. So it's the only reason I made it through that is because I had to. I did make it through an episode or two of this. It was the extra ones that I was trying to watch for more context that I was just going, no, I can't do anymore. So it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's the worst on this show, and it's not helped by the fact that everything we've watched recently has actually been really high quality. Just off the top of my head, recently we've had Games Master, we've had Wind in the Willows, we did Neighbours. We've had high quality content that we've been watching.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get a few duds. Like, I'm nervous about the next one because I remember it being shit at the time. But I mean, that could go the complete opposite way because I remember it being shit. So it may
my memories are quite limited, so I'm gonna reserve judgment.
Yeah. So who knows? But yeah, for the time being, this is definitely the new low. This thing's a fucking travesty.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst thing we watched on this show.
Easily. So, but what we're saying, listeners, is do not waste your time, please.
Literally,
even if you're the biggest Sonic fan in the world, there's
titles
better
Sonic says. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah, there's better.
And even then, that gets old.
Yeah, it does. But some Sonic Says might be worth it. Sonic Says. I don't think I can ruin the language any more than they do, so I think I'll stick with Sonic Says.
I probably can, but read my book and judge it for yourself.
Yeah, they're worth a punt. But everything else, fuck it off. Just fuck it off. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we've been fairly emphatic on that. I don't think there's much ambiguity in that one, is there?
Nope.
I certainly won't ever be watching this again.
Nope.
I did say about potentially putting it on for number 2 and seeing what he thinks. I will put it on and go make dinner.
Or, I was going to say, don't watch it.
Smash my head through a window or something.
That's more fun.
Bring the car boot down repeatedly on my scrotum. It's just something that will be more entertaining than this fucking
more
show.
Fun and less annoying.
Yeah. And probably less painful as well.
Yeah, more than likely.
But yeah, as always, if you disagree, please get in touch. Let us know on Twitter at SMPDpod. You can go to our website, ddpodcast.net, where you can get our previous episodes and other shows as well. Near enough. It's all in the link anyway. Wherever you get your podcast from, leave us a message, subscribe, and we'll get back to you the best we can. But until next time.
Gotta go fast.